The great circular chamber was silent. The view from the massive observation window was, as always, breathtaking. The swirling violet and amber bands of the gas giant Seralis filled the lower half of the view, a silent, beautiful witness to the politics above. Around the central platform, holographic pods flickered with the images of the Galactic Council delegates, insectoid, mammalian, avian, and forms defying easy description. The air, a carefully maintained mix, tasted of ozone and alien musk. Councillor Valaire, a Sarkonian whose feathers gleamed like polished bronze, rustled with barely contained agitation. The evidence is uncontested. His voice clicked and whistled through the universal translator. The Meridor Armada, a fleet of 147 vessels, ceased to exist in a span of 6 solar minutes. Not a single distress call was completed. No energy signatures of beam weapons or projectile bombardments were detected. Only distortions. A three-dimensional star chart loomed above the central dais. It showed the Meridor Frontier Outpost. Then, a series of gravitational wave pulses, rendered as rippling concentric circles, washed over the red icons of the pirate fleet. One by one, the icons blinked out. It was clean, clinical, and utterly terrifying. Sensors from the Krell mining outpost, Valaire continued. A talon tapping a control recorded localized space-time curvature of an impossible magnitude, the kind generated by a black hole's passage. Yet no black hole was present. The only power in the region capable of such an act, the only power who had pleaded for council intervention against the Meridor for the past 3 cycles, was humanity. All the holographic pods and the few physical delegates present shifted toward the human representative's platform. Ambassador Li Jiho stood calmly. He was a man in his early 50s, his black hair streaked with disciplined gray, his simple dark suit a stark contrast to the radiant robes and gleaming carapaces around him. His face was a mask of polite attentiveness. The human delegation acknowledges the data, Jiho said, his voice steady, his galactic standard accent precise. We also acknowledge that we petitioned this council for aid against the Meridor, who were slaving our colonies and strangling our trade. Our petitions were, for 3 cycles, under review. A low murmur went through the chamber. Elder Grisk, a thick-set Terran with scales the color of dried blood, hissed. Your petitions were reviewed and deemed a local conflict. The council does not police every minor dispute. That is not an answer to the accusation, Ambassador. What did you do? Jiho placed his hands lightly on the podium. We defended ourselves, Elder Grisk, as is the right of any sovereign species under the Galactic Accords, Article 12. With what? Valaire snapped, his feathers flaring. You have no fleet capable of this. Your fastest ships are 1/4 the speed of our own. Your most powerful energy cannon would barely scorch a Meridor cruiser's hull. Yet you destroyed an entire armada without being seen. Explain the mechanism. Advanced defensive protocols, Jiho replied, the same phrase he had used in 3 previous, smaller inquiries, a meaningless term. Grisk slammed a heavy fist, the sound echoing in the chamber. You have hidden a weapon that violates the principles of detectable warfare, a weapon that threatens the balance of this council. Jiho's expression remained neutral, but his eyes held a glint of something harder. The balance, Elder Grisk, was threatened when the Meridor butchered the colony on New Hope. It was threatened when the Ode, freighter Starlight's Promise, was boarded and its crew spaced. The balance was absent. We restored it. You restored nothing but chaos. Valaire said, striving for calm. Ambassador, you must understand our position. A power that can annihilate a fleet without revealing itself is a power that cannot be trusted. It is a power that operates in the shadows. The Council demands transparency. How did you achieve this? Jiho was silent for a long moment, looking out at the alien faces all etched with suspicion and fear. It was the fear he noted most. Good. It was better than the pity they had shown humanity a decade ago. The bright young species, so far behind. Fear meant they were paying attention. The technology is a product of human necessity, Jiho said finally, his voice softer. When we first joined this council, we saw the gap between your civilizations and our own. A gap centuries wide. We chose a different path of research. A path into the dark. More riddles, Grisk muttered. Not a riddle. A statement of fact. Jiho met Valar's gaze. We will provide a full report in due time. The event was a defensive action, authorized under our laws of self-preservation. The Meridor threat is neutralized. Galactic space is safer. That, counselors, is the outcome. I suggest we focus on that. The chamber erupted into a cacophony of translated clicks, hisses, and bellows. Valer raised his wings for silence, his own frustration evident. The outcome, Ambassador, is a galaxy terrified of what it cannot see. Your report is not due in time. It is due now. You will disclose the nature of this weapon, or this council will be forced to reconsider humanity's membership and impose a full technological embargo. Jiho gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. It was not a nod of submission, but of acknowledgement. The threat had been formally made. The lines were drawn. The human delegation hears the councils. Concern, Jiho said. I must consult with my government on matters of such grave security. I request a recess. Without waiting for formal permission, he tapped a control on his podium, his hologram shimmering and solidifying into a more opaque, private mode. The sounds of the angry chamber muted to a distant hum. He input a complex, quantum-encrypted channel code. After a moment, the face of Commander Park Mina resolved before him. She was on the bridge of her ship, the lighting dim, her features calm but alert. Behind her, the viewport showed not stars, but a strange, wavering darkness. Ambassador, she said. Commander Mina, Jiho replied, his official demeanor dropping, leaving only weary steel. The pressure is escalating. They know it was us. They have no idea how, and it's driving them mad with fear. And the ultimatum? Mina asked, her voice cool. Implied. Disclosure or isolation. Jiho paused. How is the fleet? Holding position at the edge of the Serali system's gravitational shadow. The silent witness remains at full stealth. The others are dispersed. The new Council scout ships are using active gravitic pulses. It's crude, but they're looking in the right place. Jiho allowed himself a thin smile. They're starting to look at the dark, not just the light. Good. Let them look a little longer. Let the fear settle into their bones. It is the only language some here understand. Understood, Mina said. And our orders? Keep the fleet in the void, Commander, Jiho said, his eyes going back to the muted, gesticulating image of Counselor Valer. They're not ready to see. Not yet. He cut the transmission. His private shield dropped. The cacophony of the council chamber rushed back in. Elder Grisk was demanding an immediate vote on sanctions. Valer was trying to maintain procedure. Jiho straightened his suit jacket. He pressed a button, and his voice, amplified, cut through the din. Counselors, humanity did not seek this confrontation, but we will not be interrogated like criminals for surviving. You want answers? You will have them, but on terms that respect our sovereignty. One propose a formal hearing in 24 hours. Until then, this session is adjourned on our authority. He did something then no ambassador had ever done. He severed the uplink to the central chamber from his end. His holographic pod winked out, leaving an empty space among the assembled galaxy dot. In the sudden, stunned silence that followed, Counselor Valer could only stare at the vacant spot. The human was gone, and all around them, in the infinite dark between the stars, something unseen and powerful was listening. The bridge of the UMV Silent Witness was a place of quiet shadows and soft, rhythmic lights. Commander Park Mina floated in her harness before the main viewer, which showed not the familiar tapestry of stars, but a ghostly, rippling representation of local spacetime. The wreckage of the Meridor Armada was a sprawling graveyard of metal and frozen gas 100,000 kilometers away, a monument to a battle no one had witnessed. Gravitic drift is nominal, Engineer Kang Yuna reported from her station, her voice calm in the near silence. Her fingers danced across a holographic interface, monitoring the ship's heart. The dark matter core is stable. Output at 0.003% of potential. Mina nodded. 0.003%. It was a figure that would haunt her if she thought about it too much. The power required to flick a pebble with the ship's systems could, at full theoretical yield, crack a small moon. They had used barely a whisper against the pirates. A nudge here, a focused gravity spike there. The ships, built for brute force, had crumpled under stresses their designs never imagined. Keep us in the sensor shadow of the largest debris cluster, Mina said. The Council's observers are getting bolder. A flicker on the edge of the space-time map drew her eye. A small vessel, a Sarkonian fast scout by its signature, was moving in a slow, systematic grid. It was pulsing active gravitonic sensors. Pulses like sonar pings in the deep ocean. They're looking for the whale, Mina murmured. Her mind drifted back, not for the first time. It always did in these tense, quiet moments. Back to a concrete bunker deep under the Sobek Mountains, the air thick with chalk dust and desperation. 22 years ago, the room was cold. Screens filled with equations that led to dead ends. A young Lieutenant Park Mina, then a junior physics liaison, stood at attention as Dr. Kim Tae, a man who looked older than his years, threw a data slate across the room. It shattered against a wall. They said no again. Kim Tae's voice was ragged. The entire Council Science Board. The theory is elegant, but the application is centuries beyond your species' practical grasp. They politely told us to stick to improving our plasma conduits. On the main screen was a schematic. It was not of a ship, but of a containment field. At its center was a label, D-Matter Stabilization Core, theoretical. Elder Grisk himself signed the refusal. A young aide, Li Jio, said softly from the corner. He was dressed in a diplomat's apprentice uniform, looking out of place. He said diverting resources to this fantasy would slow our responsible integration into the galactic community. We must walk before we run. Kim Tae turned, his eyes burning. Walk? They have anti-grav skimmers. We have chemical rockets. They have warp lanes. We have generation ships. Walking is all we will ever do if we follow their path. We will always be a century behind. We will always be petitioners. He walked to the schematic, tapping the central core. Dark matter is not a weapon. It is a key. It is the unseen hand that shapes the universe. They look for ships with engines that burn. They listen for communications that shout. They have forgotten how to see the quiet things, to hear the silence. Mina remembered speaking, her voice small in the tense room. Sir, if we can't get council approval or materials. We don't need their materials, Kim Tae interrupted, a fierce light in his eyes. We need lunar regolith, carbon from asteroids, and a facility in the Oort cloud where no one looks. We need to be very, very quiet. We will build the key. And then we will build a door. The present. Commander, Yuna's voice brought her back. The Sarkonian scout is adjusting its pattern. Its pulses are increasing in frequency. They're focusing on Sector 7. Sector 7, the exact area where the Silent Witness had executed the final, disabling gravity shear on the Meridor command ship. There was a scar there, a faint keloid in the fabric of space. Understood, Mina said, her voice all business. Prepare for minimal station-keeping thrust. Use the debris-own magnetic field to mask it. Aye, Commander. The project had been born in that cold mountain room. It was called Event Horizon, not because it involved black holes, but because it represented a point of no return. Humanity would step over the line of conventional galactic science and into the dark. Mina remembered the first tests. The awful, silent tearing of a target drone as a localized gravity field, no larger than a coin, spiked to 1 billion times Earth normal for a nanosecond. There was no flash, no explosion. The metal just came apart. She remembered the first manned vessel, the Whisper. How space itself seemed to bend away from it, light sliding around its hull like water around a stone. How it became a ghost in every sensor spectrum except one, a specialized gravitic detector they themselves had invented. The scout ship was closer now. On the bridge's secondary screen, a visual feed showed it, a sleek silver needle under bright running lights, proud and visible. Everything the silent witness was not. Gravitic pulse inbound in 3, 2, 1. Una counted, a subtle tremor. Felt more in the stomach than heard, passed through the silent witness. A dish of water on Una's console showed perfect, concentric ripples. They pinged us, Una confirmed, her calm cracking for a microsecond. Direct hit. The echo will be faint, but they're new sensors. They'll have something. On the main viewer, the rippling spacetime map displayed the echo. A soft, blurred shape where the silent witness hid. An anomaly. The comms panel lit up. An incoming hail on the standard galactic emergency frequency. It was audio only. Is the Galactic Council vessel Clarity's Edge to unidentified gravitational anomaly in Sector 7? We have detected a non-natural signature. Identify yourself immediately. Comply with Council Mandate 114 for inspection. The voice was synthetic, translated, and utterly sure of itself. Mina looked at the blur on her screen. The ghost had been glimpsed. Jiho's plan was in motion. The controlled reveal was beginning, but not as they had scripted. It was too soon. She looked at Una, who waited for orders. The silence on the bridge was absolute, heavy with the weight of what came next. Mina reached forward. Her finger hovered over the comms panel. She could ignore it. She could slip away into the deeper dark, and the scout would have only a confusing sensor ghost to report. But that would mean more fear, more speculation, more pressure on Jiho. She took a slow breath. She opened the channel. This is Commander Park Mina of the United Earth Vessel Silent Witness, she said, her voice clear and steady in the quiet bridge. We hear you, Clarity's Edge. Please state the nature of your inquiry. The pause from the other ship was long, stunned. They had expected silence, or perhaps static. They had not expected a human voice, calm and polite, to answer from the empty space right in front of them. The great chamber felt different now. The awe-inspiring view of Sorales was ignored. Every delegate, every counselor, stared at the large central hologram. It showed two things. On the left, the visual feed from the Clarity's Edge, the starry blackness of Sector 7. On the right, a grainy, wavering gravitational map. In its center was a pulsing, blurry shape that had just spoken. Ambassador Lee Jiho stood perfectly still at his podium. The message from Mina had reached him just seconds before the council reconvened. A single word: contact. He had expected more time. The plan was fraying. Counselor Valer's feathers were so flat they looked like a metal shell. You have a ship in a declared neutral observation zone. A ship that does not appear on standard scans. A ship that matches the gravitational profile of the weapon that destroyed the Meridor. Explain this, Ambassador, now. Jiho kept his eyes on the hologram. He could see the data stream from the Clarity's edge, trying and failing to get a clear reading. That vessel is the UMV Silent Witness. It is part of a human defensive squadron. It was monitoring the debris field for residual threats, as is our right. Defensive? Elder Grisk's hiss filled the chamber. He pointed a thick, scaled finger at the gravitic map. That is a weapons signature. You have hidden a fleet of invisible warships. This is not defense. This is preparation for ambush, for conquest. That is a profound and dangerous mischaracterization, Gio said, his tone hardening. For 3 cycles, we cried attack when the Meridor struck us. This council called it a local conflict. Now we cry defense, and you call it conquest. It seems our actions are only judged by the fear they inspire, not by the provocation that necessitated them. Do not play the philosopher. Valere snapped. Your ship is a tangible violation. The Galactic Accords demand transparency in weapon systems that can destabilize regional security. This thing is the definition of destabilizing. You will order it to drop its stealth and submit to a full scan and boarding inspection by a joint council team. Immediately. A murmur of agreement rippled through the assembled species. The fear in the room was turning into a mob-like demand for control. G. Ho knew this was the critical moment. Straight denial meant sanctions, maybe even a collective military response. They would label humanity rogue. Compliance meant handing over their greatest secret, their only equalizer, to a council that included powers like the Terrans, who had been happy to let the pirates weaken humanity. He had one card to play, a dangerous one. Councillor Vilaire, Elders, Jiho began, his voice dropping into a slower, more deliberate register. Before we speak of inspections and violations, we must speak of context. We must speak of the conditions that forced a peaceful species to look into the dark for safety. He tapped his own podium. A new data window opened in the hologram, next to the live feed. It showed financial records, encrypted routing codes, and cargo manifests. These are Meridor financial streams, recovered from the command ship's data core before its reactor failed. Gio lied smoothly. The data was real, but it had come from years of painful, quiet intelligence work by analyst Choi Subin and others. We have been analyzing them. The patterns are interesting. Grisk shifted, his heavy tail scraping the floor. What is the relevance? The relevance, Gio continued, highlighting a series of transactions, is that the Meridor Armada did not operate on plunder alone. They were funded, supplied with advanced torpedo guidance systems and Class II shield breakers, goods that are strictly regulated by this council. The room grew very quiet. Follow the path, Gio said, letting the complex web of shell companies and blind accounts resolve. The algorithm did its work. Lines connected, fake identities dissolved. The trail, carefully prepared, did not lead directly to the Toran homeworld. It led to a small, resource-rich planetoid in Toran-aligned space. A planetoid whose export licenses were signed by a subsidiary, wholly owned by the Toran Sovereign War Chest. The connection hung in the air, bright and damning. Elder Grisk became a statue. This is a fabrication, a desperate distraction. Is it? Jiho asked softly. The silent witness did not just destroy pirates, Elder Grisk. It captured their records. It seems the Meridor were not just a local conflict. They were a proxy, a tool to keep certain species like humanity weak and dependent, while others profited from the chaos. The atmosphere cracked. Accusatory glances, long-held suspicions between rival species, now had a focal point. Valere stared at Grisk, his avian face unreadable, but his posture rigid with new understanding. You accuse a council elder of funding pirates. Valere's voice was a deadly whisper. I present evidence recovered from the battlefield, Jiho corrected. How the Council interprets it is a matter for its own ethics committee. My point is this: humanity built what it built because the existing systems of galactic security failed us. More than failed, they were weaponized against us. To now demand we hand over the only means that ensured our survival to the very body that allowed that threat to exist is not reasonable. It is not just. It is surrender. Grisk was on his feet. He speaks lies to cover his aggression. I demand you dismiss this fiction and seize that ship. But the momentum had shifted. The ultimatum was broken. The Council was no longer a unified front against a hidden human threat. It was a room full of delegates, suddenly wondering who else might have invisible fleets, who else had been playing games. Valer raised a wing, silencing the growing din. He looked from Grisk's furious face to Jiho's calm one. He saw the truth. Not necessarily the full truth of the data, but the truth of the power shift. Humanity was not pleading anymore. It was negotiating from strength, and it had just exposed a rot within the Council itself. The evidence, Valer said carefully, will be examined by a neutral audit team. Until that examination is complete, the accusation against the Tauron delegation is suspended. But so too is their vote on any matter pertaining to human technology. Grisk let out a roar of protest, but two Sarkonian guards moved subtly nearer his platform. Valer turned his full attention to Jiho. You have bought a delay, Ambassador, not a resolution. The fear of your technology remains. The silent witness remains an unseen threat. You have shown us a crime, perhaps, but you have not built trust. Jiho inclined his head. What would build trust, Counselor? Transparency, Valer said, but not at gunpoint, not as a surrender. He thought for a long moment. You will not submit your ship for inspection, but you will demonstrate it. In a neutral zone, under full Council observation, you will show us what it can do, not in war, but in a controlled exercise. Let us see the key you have built. Then, and only then, will we discuss its place in this galaxy. It was a better offer than Jiho had hoped for 5 minutes ago. A demonstration, not a dissection. A chance to control the narrative. Agreed, Jiho said. On one condition: the audit of the financial evidence proceeds immediately and publicly. The galaxy should know why we had to walk into the dark. Valer held his gaze and gave a sharp avian nod. It will be so. Coordinates for the demonstration will be sent within the hour. Have your ship ready, Commander. The feed from the silent witness showed only the silent stars. Then, Mina's voice came through, clear and professional. The silent witness acknowledges, Counselor. Awaiting coordinates. The link closed. The chamber was left in a stunned silence. The politics of the galaxy quietly appended. The hidden fleet was no longer a rumor. It was a fact. And the Council, reeling from scandal, now had to prepare for a show they dreaded to see. President Quan Jun's office was a study in calm minimalism, high in Earth's orbital administrative station. The blue-white curve of the planet hung in the large viewport, a serene backdrop to the tense conversation. Ambassador Li Jiho's hologram stood solidly before the president's desk, relaying the Council's demand. A demonstration, President Quan repeated, steepling his fingers. His face was lined with the weight of the last decade. Not an inspection. That is a clever compromise by Valer. It gives them a show without forcing us to hand over the core technology. It is, Jiho agreed. But a show can be misinterpreted. If we demonstrate offensive capabilities, we confirm their fears of a hidden weapon. If we demonstrate too little, we look weak, and the pressure to dismantle the fleet will return. On a second holoscreen, the face of Commander Park Mina listened silently. She was still on the bridge of the silent witness. holding position in the silent dark near the wreckage. "The military advisory board is clear," said a third voice. General Han from the Joint Command Center on Mars. His image was sharp, his uniform crisp. "We demonstrate overwhelming force. We use a derelict as a target, and we vaporize it with a focused gravity shear. We show them that the age of human vulnerability is over, permanently. And we ignite a new arms race," President Kwan said quietly. "Every species will pour their resources into replicating our technology, or into building something to counter it. We exchange one kind of fear for another. We become the new Meridor in their minds, just bigger and quieter. With all due respect, Madam President, we have the advantage," General Han pressed. "We should use it to set terms. Galactic security protocols revised under our leadership. A permanent seat on the High Command. We have earned it." Jiho watched the president. He knew her. She was not a soldier. She was an architect, one who had helped design the first off-world settlements. She thought in structures and foundations, not in battles. "Commander Mina," the president said, turning to her screen. "You are the one holding the key. You have been in the dark, watching them. What do you see?" Mina was quiet for a moment, her eyes looking at something beyond her camera. "I see a scout ship, the Clarity's Edge. When it realized we were there, its first reaction wasn't to attack. It was to hail, to ask. It was afraid, yes, but it followed protocol. It sought communication." She straightened in her harness. "General Han is right that we must show strength, but not the strength of a hammer. The silent witness isn't a hammer. We didn't smash the pirates. We untied them. We applied precise pressure at the exact points of failure. That is our strength. Control. Perfect, undetectable control." Jiho felt the idea forming. "A middle path," he said slowly. "We do not vaporize a target. We disable it. We do not show raw power. We show surgical precision. We show that our technology can end a conflict without a single casualty, without a single explosive decompression. Disable how?" General Han asked, skeptical. "Remember the first test, General," Mina said, a slight edge in her voice. "The coin. We create a microsingularity, a gravity well so intense it fries every unshielded circuit within a localized field. It would turn any modern ship into a dead, floating hull. No radiation, no shrapnel, just silence." The room was quiet as they considered it. It was a weapon, undeniably, but its effect was containment, not annihilation. "We also demonstrate its non-combat utility," Mina added. "The warp bubble for short-range tactical movement. Not for fleeing, but for positioning. To render traditional battle formations and firing lines obsolete. We show that the ship itself redefines the battlefield." President Kwan nodded slowly, her gaze distant, as if she were already seeing the holographic feeds from the Council observation post. "We show them the scalpel, not the sword. We demonstrate that humanity has achieved not just a new weapon, but a new principle, one of minimal force and maximum control. It is a risk," General Han warned. "They may still see only the weapon." "They will," Jiho said, "but they will also see its restraint. And they will have to ask themselves, if the roles were reversed, would they have shown the same restraint? The Meridor would not have. I doubt the Tarans would have. That is the point we must make. Our technology is different because we are different." The president stood up, walking to the viewport to look at Earth. "We will proceed with Commander Mina's proposal. A two-part demonstration. First, the targeted disablement of a derelict vessel. Second, a short-range, untraceable warp jump. Clean, precise, clinical." She turned back, her decision made. "Ambassador Jiho, inform the Council that we agree to their demonstration. The terms are ours. We choose the derelict target from the Mirador debris. We control the range and timing, and the observation ship remains at a distance they will specify. We have nothing to hide, but we will not perform under a microscope." "Understood, Madam President," Geo said. "Commander Mina," the President continued, "you have the most difficult job. You must make the unbelievable look deliberate. Make the terrifying look controlled. You are not just a captain now. You are an ambassador to the dark. Show them what we found there." "I will," Mina said, her voice firm. The link to Mars faded as General Han signed off. Reluctantly accepting the order, Jiho's hologram was the last to remain. "They will be watching Grisk, you know," he said to the President. "The audit is public. If the evidence is as solid as Subin believes, his standing is finished. But a cornered animal is dangerous." "That is why the demonstration must be flawless," President Kwan replied. "It must be so convincing that even Grisk's allies cannot use it to stir fear. It must be a fact so clear transcends politics." She offered a faint, tired smile. "For a species that mastered the unseen, we are now tasked with putting on the most visible performance in our history." "The curtain is already up," Geo said. "They're staring at the empty stage. Now we have to show them the play." He gave a final nod, and his hologram winked out. The office was silent again. President Kwan returned to her desk, but did not sit. She looked at the planet below, at the billions of lives unaware of the delicate thread their future hung by. A thread soon to be tested in the cold, silent void by a woman in a ship of shadows. The demonstration was set. There was no going back now. The designated space was a deep, empty stretch between star systems. The Council observation post, a bulky Sarkonian station called the Vigil, hung safely 5,000 kilometers away. Its viewports were crowded. Every delegate species had sent representatives. The main auditorium was a tense, silent tableau. On a massive screen, the live feed showed the chosen derelict, a Mirador heavy cruiser, its hull scarred and open to vacuum, drifting slowly. It was the perfect, morbid target. Ambassador Li Jiho stood at a separate viewport, not with the main crowd. Counselor Vi Lair joined him, his feathers still but his eyes sharp. "A nervous galaxy watches, Ambassador." "A curious one, I hope," Geo replied softly. On the bridge of the Silent Witness, Commander Park Mina felt a profound calm. The frantic preparation was done. All that remained was the act. Engineer Kang Yuna gave a final status check. Dark matter core is stable. Gravitic projectors primed. Warp lattice charged. We are a ghost, Commander. Ready to speak. Mina opened a channel to the Vigil. Council Observation Post. This is Commander Park Mina of the UMV Silent Witness. We are ready to commence Demonstration Alpha. Do you confirm your sensors are active and focused on the target vessel? A Sarkonian voice, tight with tension, responded. We confirm, Silent Witness. All sensors active. Proceed. Acknowledged. Beginning in 10 seconds. On the screen in the auditorium, nothing changed. The derelict cruiser continued its slow, dead tumble. A countdown appeared in the corner. 10, 9, 8. Why can't we see their ship? A whispered question rippled through the crowd. At 0. It happened. There was no beam of light. No streak of missiles. No flash of energy. One moment, the derelict's running lights, powered by its dormant backup batteries, glowed a faint red. The next moment, they simply winked out. All of them. Simultaneously. Then, the gentle tumble stopped. The ship became utterly, completely inert. A frozen statue in the dark. A Turan engineer on the Vigil blurted out, "What happened?" "Scan it." The sensor data flooded the screen next to the visual. The readouts were baffling. The derelict's hull was intact. No heat signature of an impact. No energy residue. But every electrical system, every circuit, every ounce of power within the ship had been neutralized. It was as if a wave of perfect entropy had washed over it, selectively targeting anything man-made. "Explain," Counselor Valere said. His voice hushed. Mina's voice came through, calm and educational. The silent witness generated a focused gravity, well, approximately the size of a small coin, with a field strength of 1.2 billion gravities. It was maintained for 3 microseconds. This field, positioned amidships, created a localized space-time curvature, so severe it induced catastrophic electronic failure via induced currents. The effect is contained and non-explosive. The ship is disabled, permanently. All systems are fused. There is no collateral damage. The auditorium was dead silent. They had expected a terrifying show of force. They had been given a whisper that killed machines. It was, in its way, more unsettling than any explosion. "Now," Mina's voice continued. "Demonstration beta." Before anyone could react, the sensor feeds screamed. A massive gravitational anomaly appeared not near the derelict, but only 200 kilometers from the Vigil station itself. Alarms blared for a second before being silenced by frantic operators. On the visual feed, space itself seemed to knot and twist. Light bent. Then, like a stone emerging from a still pond, the silent witness faded into visibility. It did not snap into view. It resolved. Its hull was not polished metal, but a non-reflective matte gray that seemed to drink the starlight. It had no obvious engines, no glowing weapon ports. It was sleek, silent, and impossibly close. A wave of pure panic swept through the observation deck. Delegates stumbled back. Valere's hand went to a console for support, but Ji-Ho did not move. He had known this was the plan, to show they could be anywhere, at any time. From this new position, hovering silently beside the terrified council station, Mina's final transmission came. "This is a short-range precision warp jump. It leaves no residual radiation trail. It is untraceable by conventional or gravitic means. It allows for instantaneous repositioning." She paused, letting the sheer, intimate proximity of her warship sink in. They could almost see the details of its hull from the Visual S ports. "The purpose of this technology," Mina said, her voice clear in the stunned quiet, "is not to attack without warning. It is to be anywhere a threat emerges, before that threat can act. It is to end conflicts before they cost lives. We did not build a sword. We built a shield that can be anywhere it is needed." For a long moment, there was only the hum of the Vigil S-own systems. Then, Elder Grisk's voice, hoarse with fury and fear, crackled over the station's intercom from his private quarters. "A lie. It is a first-strike weapon. They have just proven they can park a fleet on our doorsteps unseen. We must strike now, before they—" "Silence him," Valere ordered, his voice cutting like a blade. The Turan's feed was abruptly cut. Valere turned to face Ji-Ho. The avian counselor looked older, the weight of the galaxy's new reality settling on his shoulders. He looked out at the dark ship, so close and so quiet, you did not see conquest. Valere said, the words not quite a question. "We sought safety," Ji-Ho replied. "For 3 cycles we had none. So we made our own. The dark is only frightening, counselor, when you are alone in it." He gestured towards the viewport, to the silent witness and the dead derelict beyond. "We can all see better now." Valere stared at the human ship for a long, long time. The fear was still there, in his eyes, in the room. But it was changing, mixing with something else. Awe, a grim respect, the understanding that the rules had just been rewritten. He straightened his robes and addressed the room, his voice carrying the full authority of his office. "The demonstration is concluded. The human technology has been witnessed. It is formidable. It is unprecedented. He took a breath, and it was used today with restraint we have not often shown to them. This council will now debate its findings. Ambassador Geo, you and Commander Mina have the thanks of this council for your transparency. It was a formal, diplomatic phrase. But in the context of the silent, matte gray warship hovering outside the window, it was the most significant concession the galaxy had ever made. On the bridge of the Silent Witness, Engineer Yuna let out a slow breath, powering down projectors, core returning to stealth-level output. Mina watched as the Vigil's running lights slowly came back to normal brightness, the panic subsiding. Take us back to holding position, Yuna. Slowly. Let them watch us leave. The Silent Witness did not warp away. It turned, with a grace that seemed impossible for its size, and began to move away on conventional whisper-quiet thrusters. As it reached a safe distance, its hull began to lose cohesion again. The edges blurred. The starfield behind it warped. And then it was gone. Not with a flash, but with a psi dot in the auditorium, the silence remained, now filled with a new kind of weight. The unseen fleet was real, but it had not attacked. It had shown its teeth and then carefully sheathed them. Jiho finally turned from the viewport. The path ahead would be difficult. There would be negotiations, treaties, fears to manage. But humanity was no longer a petitioner in the dark. They were a power at the table. And for the first time, the table was of their own making.